Here's Brody Brazil.
Throughout this entire process and journey and saga of potential relocation for the A's to Las Vegas, we have heard from most of the main parties. But it's just a few parties, and really the same parties over and over again. Like the A's, for example, usually in a written statement or a comment they make about developments or how things are going. Obviously, lawmakers in Nevada had their say with the state legislature during the regular session and the special session, but most of that was back in May and June. And then from time to time, Bally's Corporation and their executive leadership, they comment on this project and their coordination and cooperation with the A's. But there's one entity we really haven't heard a bunch from yet, and that's the actual landlord, the landowners of the Tropicana site, and that's GLPI, Gaming and Leisure Properties Incorporated. They recently held a quarterly earnings conference call, and on it, they said something which caught a lot of people's attention. Actually, they gave out multiple big pieces of information, but obviously this turned into the headline, which definitely caught my eye. And the story comes to us from the Nevada Independent, who, by the way, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I cannot praise their work enough. Specifically what Howard has done and broken every main and major story throughout this entire process, really dating back to late April, when he broke the news that the A's had some connections in the state of Nevada and they put all their focus on Las Vegas and that they would turn their back on the city of Oakland. Howard's headline here on this piece says, future Las Vegas landlord of A's says, quote, not a lot of margin for error in stadium development. Now that quote comes to us from Brandon Moore. He is the COO of GLPI. And here's what he said, quote, from what we understand, they, as in the A's, want to begin the 2028 season in that park at the Tropicana Hotel site. And when you start working backwards from that, they don't have a lot of room for error. And that's just one quote where he said it like that. There were multiple quotes during this session, during this conference call, where he used the words, not a lot of room for error. So that's definitely on his mind. That is definitely a perspective, and it really shouldn't come as a total surprise. When you think about this project and the idea of relocation, it started at a different site, then it moved to this site, and then there were these renderings, and now there's not even these renderings. In fact, I feel a bit fraudulent to even be putting these up on your screen right now. They don't exist anymore. The A's design director and the person in charge of helping facilitate this process, he has already said through the media that the A's are working with two different groups and that these renderings should be wadded up and discarded. They were concepts. And the next round, by the way, is only going to be a 75% conceptual design. So we're not even talking like full-on blueprints yet, the exact way to go. We're talking about a 75% design concept that's coming up, they say, in November. So again, going back to these, what do we do with these? I see these on YouTube. I see these in the media. I see these all over the place, social media. We shouldn't even be looking at these. I'm going to get them off the screen. They mean nothing to any of us anymore because none of that will ever even exist. Going back to Mr. Moore, he says, quote, we're reasonably certain the project is a go once relocation is approved with the 75% owner's vote across Major League Baseball. He says, we're reasonably certain the project is a go once that happens. He also says, quote, I think you'll start to see a timeline come out for the demolition of the current site that will permit the physical construction of the stadium to begin. So I don't think there's a set timeline on this yet, which does sound significant. It almost sounds severe, like that's putting it pretty harsh, but that's also the obvious. You've got a lot of things to do here. They need to happen in order. You can't build anything until you completely demolish everything else, but you can't do that until you really have plans on how you're going to do this, how you're going to pay for it, and is Major League Baseball going to actually let this happen? So you can kind of see the chain of events, the timeline, in fact, the very tight timeline that's going to need to happen here in the final 2 months of this calendar year. And really, I'm going to say the final 45 days of the calendar year, because baseball itself, it shuts down past pretty much December 15th. Owners, GMs, front offices, they want nothing to do with work during the holidays. This is the middle of their offseason. They want to enjoy it. But let me set all this up by saying the A's have already established that they will, by November, some point in November, choose a design firm. There's two different groups right now. They're both going to pitch and present something different from the renderings we just saw. But all of it is to get a better idea of what they say is constructability and cost. Constructability in a sense that, yeah, you can draw it and design it, but can you actually build what you want to do here? And the other most important part, can you do it for a cost that we can pin down? I mean, the A's all along have said $1.5 billion, but what if this needs to be extravagant? What if it needs to keep up with everything else happening on the Strip? What if all of a sudden both design firms come back and say, well, this is going to be 1.9. And then after a few years and inflation and materials costs, it could be 2.3, just like that. Who knows? But we don't even know right now a design, a 75% design, the constructability of this, or the cost of this. Will it all get sorted out? Sure, but it's going to happen in November. And then by January 1st, the A's say they need the MLB owner vote on their relocation application. Now, what's smack dab in the middle of all this from November to January? It's the winter meetings for baseball. Everybody gets together. This year, by the way, it's going to be in Nashville. Sounds like I should already be booking my trip to Music City for coverage of this. But that seems to me like when it might be presented, pushed, and pitched in front of everybody, that if the A's have made up their mind in November, they've had time to package it, they'll present it at the winter meetings, and then they're probably aiming for a vote not long after that. And up till this point, I don't think anybody has been clear on when a vote might happen. People thought it might take place during the season. I don't think you want to touch it anywhere near the playoffs, right? So October, the entire month of that is kind of shut down. I mean, it makes sense why you can't really do this until you have time, but boy, that's a tight timeline. And all of this, right, needs to happen for two reasons. Number one, the A's want to stay on revenue sharing. To do that, they need something approved by the second week of January. So that's why they want to have a vote by January 1st. But construction can't begin. And going back to that tight timeline and small margin for error that GLPI says, like, they need to get this process going because construction can't begin or demolition can't begin until all of this takes place. But if the A's don't get approval by January 1st or even like January 20th, hypothetically, I'm not so sure that Las Vegas is as fast-tracked and as streamlined as it seems to be right now or as it ever was. So here's more from the Nevada Independent and Howard's piece. The GLPI chairman and CEO Peter Carlino said he, quote, doesn't fully understand where that project is going, end quote, concerning replacement of the Tropicana, but said company executives have sat in on discussions with officials from the team, the A's, and the casino operator, Bally's, concerning the stadium project. Quote, the design process is on a tear, and the A's and Bally's have been highly focused on keeping this moving at a very, very fast pace, Carlino said. And two varies makes me think that it's really going faster than he expected or than it normally does, or he's not really just sure what's going on, but he knows a lot of things are happening, and that's fine. But that's also interesting to hear it put that way. They're on a tear. And that his company executives have sat in on discussions with officials. And maybe they don't need much involvement. But it's interesting to hear it put in that perspective and said that way. GLPI executives expressed some surprise when asked about comments by Bally's leadership, right? They run the Tropicana. They don't own the land. They run the Tropicana. Bally's leadership said that, quote, shared acres of land could be incorporated into the stadium site. Now, this all goes back to the whole 9-acre question. Is that enough land to pull off a retractable roof stadium? There's only 7 across Major League Baseball, and none of them sit on 9 acres. The next closest and smallest is in Milwaukee. That's 11.7 something acres, like 2.7, almost 3 more acres. And they have that unique fan roof design, which uses up all the space possible to have a retractable roof. So that's a huge question. In fact, that's even something addressed by the A's director of design, who said, literally, it's a problem. Now, I know he said a problem as more like a challenge problem, but the A's director of design has called it a problem on dealing with just 9 acres of, by the way, 35 total acres on this Bally's Hotels, Tropicana hotel site run by Bally's. Bally's is in charge and GLPI is in charge of 35 acres here. They're giving the A's 9 for free. They're also giving them $175 million, which we'll discuss in just a second. But there's been some question about, well, maybe Bally's will fudge a little bit. Maybe everybody is coming to the realization that 9 acres is not enough to do this. And so, hey, what's an acre or two here or there? Well, when the cost per acre is estimated at about $20 million or more, it's a big deal. So here's what GLPI says about 9 acres. Quote, the plan is for 9 acres, and the 9-acre number has always been the number provided by the parties involved who are constructing the baseball stadium, GLPI's Chief Development Officer Steve Ladaney said on the conference call. Quote, there is a significant portion of shared space, which also includes parking. A lot of the ancillary exterior amenities will be shared between both the casino and the stadium itself. Now, this has been reported recently, debated frequently, that there might be more opportunity for the A's to get more land here to help them with this problem, this 9-acre problem. Seems to me quite clear that GLPI is drawing a line in the sand and saying 9 acres is what it's always been, and this is what we're going to do with this project moving forward. This complicates things, in my opinion, a little bit. Now, more about that $175 million. Now, this, again, it's kind of all over the place here. We talked about, the main headline here being little room for error, but there's more details that Howard uncovered in this conference call. $175 million was part of the A's acquiring this free 9 acres of land at the Tropicana site. Now, you would think, wait, isn't the 9 acres kind of like the birthday gift? And you're giving somebody a gift card to go along with their birthday gift? Right? It's literally like that. I couldn't figure it out back then. Why would somebody give free land and give money to go along with it? It's like, hey, you want to borrow my car? Here's the car. Here's the keys. Oh, and here's my credit card for gas money that you might need. Just fill it up. Do whatever you want. Moore said that part of GLPI's $175 million commitment would go towards the demolition of the Tropicana. The funds would also be used for the construction of, quote, the podium and some other shared infrastructure. So now it makes sense. And I wasn't sure if that was $175 million to just go towards the A's project. You know what I mean? Like, here, take it, use it however you want. Turns out this is going to cost Bally's and GLPI probably a pretty penny. I'm not in the demolition game besides, just projects here at my house, which I've done. But demolition and an entire 35-acre site that has to be leveled and totally redone with infrastructure and, sewage and electrical and all that stuff, utilities, that's going to cost a considerable amount of $175 million. Maybe a lot of it, maybe most of it. I don't know. And to demolish the 2 towers and all the buildings that are there and carry away all the rubble and to do it safely, without probably imploding it. I don't know if I haven't seen one of those in a while from Las Vegas. Do they still do that? Or is that site even too busy to do that? He says, quote, I think you're going to see the demolition piece up front in terms of their payment, and then the rest of it that we've committed to at the back end, about the $175 million. So, wow, it turns out that, all this time I thought, hey, $1.5 billion stadium, here's 175. So 380 from public money, 175 from GLPI. Well, this is kind of now off the table. I think we all had thought that maybe this could be used by the A's to fund the stadium. And now it's going to mostly probably be used to just clean up the site. And that is why GLPI committed it. Smart by them. I don't know if this had ever been discussed on how the $175 million would ever be used. So to recap, there was a lot going on here on a lot of different levels in a lot of different regards. To recap, we won't know the cost or constructability of any A's stadium in Las Vegas until November, when a design firm is chosen and when they come up with a 75% conceptual design. The A's need their vote by January 1st. Again, I'm crossing off most of the second half of December as a month that's just off limits by Major League Baseball to take a vote. So they've got about 45 days if they start on literally November 1st. Construction needs a vote by Major League Baseball. Demolition and construction and anything moving forward cannot start unless there's an actual vote by baseball. And because of all this, there's no site timeline yet. It makes sense. 9 acres and that's it. Again, we've all seen it reported in places and commented in places, and maybe expectations or assumptions are out there, but you saw the quote. I think it was putting it straightforward that there's 9 acres and that's it. And there are some shared spaces, don't get me wrong. But in terms of the structure itself, I saw that there could be some negotiation for more land if the A's need it. Doesn't sound like that here. And then GLPI's $175 million is going to mostly start going towards demolition and then the shared infrastructure following that. So it's kind of off the table for the A's. And all of that to also include just the main headline. Little margin of error for the A's in their maneuver here in trying to relocate. We haven't heard much from GLPI. This was one of their first opportunities to comment, and this is where they're saying things are, and I think it's understood. This is all difficult to pull off. It's a sequence of, high leverage steps and things that need to happen, and if they want to do this on time, which is also a big deal, if the A's told baseball that now it's 2029 to do this because of any delays or the process. The A's had said recently that Howard Terminal was going to take too long. So all of this is going to have to factor into a decision that Major League Baseball owners will eventually have to make. And that's a separate process. GLPI is just saying there's little margin for errors here in this A's tight timeline. So, hey, you made it here all the way to the end of the video. I appreciate that. Thumbs up down below to celebrate. It'll help this video be passed along. Keep it smart and keep it civil in the comment section below. I think I'm going to start saying that from now on. Keep it smart in the comments down below. I get it. Everybody's fired up. But try and, be productive in the comment section below if you want. And don't forget, subscribe to this channel so that I can definitely see you back here next time.